Welcome to another edition of Jamaica Magazine. Today we review some of the recent developments in industry, commerce, agriculture and fisheries, and later how you, yes you, can be the influence in a child's life. But before we get to those matters, women tell us their views on helping to protect vulnerable girls and women in society. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay with us.
There are a number of different things that women can do to protect other women. I think one of the first things that we can do is to make ourselves more knowledgeable about the vulnerabilities. Who is vulnerable, where are they vulnerable, and how can we use information as well as the different resources available to be able to protect ourselves.
Support, because sometimes we are going through stuff and you might be afraid to speak out. So if you know that you have that kind of support, a facility, institution, somebody you can go to, then I know definitely that they will speak up more and show some interest.
We just have to keep each other in the loop. We have to watch each other's backs. And we have to be very vocal about things that have happened to us, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's out there in terms of crime. So be very vocal and frank and honest about it so that other women can be aware of what is happening and can know to protect themselves from particular dangers. So if you keep it to yourself and you don't share it, somebody else may be in danger and you perhaps could have avoided that danger for them.
What we can do is just don't turn a blind eye. Any little thing that we see that we think, if you see something and you just think for a minute that you should go and say something, just be brave and reach out and go and say something. Because I've had instances where I see people, girls in their uniform acting a certain way and want to go over and have just been threatened by the type of behavior that they are showing or just being afraid to say something. So I think maybe if we just stop turning a blind eye.
Violence against women and girls is a human problem, not just a woman's problem. It's a problem for men too. Gender violence takes many forms, including sexual assault, domestic violence, relationship abuse, sexual harassment, and sexual abuse of children. The magnitude of ongoing violence against women and children in our country is cause for alarm. We can end the violence. It requires all of us to end the violence. I call on all our men and women in Jamaica to take a stand. And men especially must get involved in this movement to create a better world for their daughters, their mothers, their sisters, their aunts, their uncles, their fathers, their sons, and for themselves. Let's protect and reassure. Let's unite to end gender violence.
Just this week, Parliament approved the national budget, which allocates over $7 billion to grow industry, commerce, agriculture and fisheries in the upcoming financial year. It will continue work in progress to drive economic growth through these sectors. As we prepare to hear more of what's planned, the Portfolio Minister reviews successes to date.
Hi, I'm Carl Samuda, Minister of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. And I'm at Hindstown at the farm of Mr. Lawrence Patterson, a potato farmer who has in all approximately 70 acres of potatoes. In this particular area, he has about 30 to 40 acres. And his operation is in partnership with one of the large distributive houses, which fits in perfectly into the strategy that we embarked on when I became minister in February 2016. I'd like to share with you some of the experiences of the ministry since becoming minister. In 2016, the first challenge that confronted us was in the sugar industry, where we went to find that Moneymus factory was on the brink of closing down, which meant that we would lose employment for 600 to 800 workers and the extended families of those workers. We took action appropriately, and we were able to save that factory. And today, I'm pleased to announce that the factory is getting ready for the new crop that is now to be starting reaping shortly. The other area that confronted us in terms of challenges was in Long Pond, in Trelawney, where that factory had closed and it could not operate because there was a lack of finances to repair the factory itself. But the farming side of that operation continued, and we were able to utilize some transport money that had been set aside, and we were able to operate the factory that year. Unfortunately, we have not been able to continue because it requires continuous inflows, which are quite substantial. But the cane has been taken off and will continue to be taken off this year through the provision of over $50 million, which we will be giving to enable the farmers to transport the cane to Worthy Park and to Appleton Estate. And we are working with the owners of the estate to work out a strategy whereby the factory can be saved, and that is a negotiation that is in the advanced stages of development. We are also experiencing in the ministry a rebirth of the export of bananas. We have made a shipment to Trinidad, and we are reaching out for broader markets. Last year we experienced, that is 2017, we experienced unprecedented growth in the poultry industry. Eggs production, again, never been experienced at that level in Jamaica. We also have done tremendously well with our pork industry. We are here at the Irish Potato Farm, and so far we are at the stage where we are producing just over 90% of the demand for Irish potato in Jamaica. I'm expecting that very shortly we will get to the stage where we'll be totally self-sufficient. We are embarking on a strategy to encourage again a partnership between the trading sector and the agricultural sector to expand out the onion production. And one particular large organization has undertaken as a pilot project, I think some 15 acres, with the expectation to go up to over 400 acres of production of onions. We have been plagued in agriculture through climate change, through unpredictable weather that is adverse to the production of crops. And so we have to support our farmers. And this year we have made $100 million available to the parishes most affected, that is Portland, Trelawney and St. Mary. It is very difficult to get up and running again, but the courage of the farmers of Jamaica is very encouraging indeed. We introduced, through the Bureau of Standards, regulations to manage the packaging and labeling standards and to elevate it to a level where no imported sugar can enter Jamaica and be put on the shelves for our consumers unless they bear the markings of the Bureau of Standards. So we are in command of that process, and so far the results are very encouraging. But for nothing else, the protection of the health of our people, knowing exactly the source of the sugar. One of the things that we are very happy with and very proud of is the fact that we were able to pass through the House of Parliament after 9 years of preparation, the Jamaica Agricultural Commodities Regulatory Authority. This authority will regulate the areas of coconut, cocoa, and spices, coffee as well. The reason for this is that we have to ensure that through appropriate regulation, working with the farmers, not in a cumbersome way, but in a supportive way, as partners in this whole development area, that we are satisfied that the products are able to meet world standards. Shortly we will be tabling the Fisheries Bill in the MSME, which is the small and micro business sector. We have established a division within the ministry designed specifically to facilitate small business. And associated with that, we have set aside $400 million, which will be made available to that sector at considerably reduced interest rates. Listen, we grew in the first year of my administration's taking over office. We grew by 13.5%. Last year, we were plagued by excessive flooding, and we were able to hold our own. All indications are that the strategies that we have put in place and the infrastructure that we are building, both hard and soft infrastructure, will facilitate a return to substantial growth. And that is what I'm looking forward to. Moving forward, we have to look at the type of agriculture that will challenge the disadvantages of climate change. So we have to deal with protected agriculture, covered agriculture. We have to deal with greenhouses. We have to be more concerned about what we can do to protect ourselves against the elements, whilst at the same time, in the areas of drought, we will have to focus on providing greater sources of irrigation and improved technology. And as an overall strategy, we have to look at large farms, large productions that will enable us to benefit from the economies of scale and be in a position to export more than we need for the domestic market. So we will satisfy the domestic market and have excess to export. In order to do that, we have to be efficient, competitive, and reliable, consistent. So with that, agriculture is going to move forward, and with the team that we have, all those who work with us, all those who help us, all those who give us technical advice, I'm confident that we will go forward from strength to strength.
We want a productive Jamaica. We are not productive Jamaicans. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity is the way to go for all us Jamaicans. Small business, big business, old and young, we are tell every woman and man. We want growth and prosperity for a better nation with a building plan. So we can build our product and sell our product and put more money in our hand. Our economy can rise to a level and build a better nation. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity.
Productivity, pathway to prosperity. A message brought to you by the Jamaica Productivity Center, a department of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Have you ever wondered what it means to a child to have someone who they can look up to and emulate? Watch this next feature to find out how you can be influential.
Do I want my children to be assertive?
As the old adage says, the family represents the primary source of socialization.
Do I want to reinforce hard work? Do I want to reinforce generosity? How do I do that?
It is through effective parenting that positive values, attitudes, perceptions, and habits are developed.
Do I want my children to be independent?
November is Parents Month, and the theme, the mission, the call to action is to be the influence.
Take back the reins
and you become the #1 influence in your child's life.
And the truth is that if parents don't accept this responsibility, then the void may be filled and will be filled by negative forces in our culture that do not support healthy morals and ethics for our families.
And that is why we're encouraging parents to be that influence, to not allow society to dictate who your child is going to be. We believe that parents ought to encourage dreams. There's nothing that's too far-fetched. We have to understand that present circumstances too do not dictate your future. So the fact that you are in a particular circumstance as a parent and you might feel downtrodden or heartbroken, it does not mean that that is where you have to remain. And it certainly does not mean that that is where your child has to remain. So there's no dream that's ever achieved without a plan. And after you chart the plan of action, you're going to help your child to keep fixed. Remember, this is what you had said you wanted to do. Remember, this is something you said you wanted to achieve. So you're going to keep the child fixed because that's what it means to be the influence. You don't want to impose your own ambitions on children. That's not something that works. Especially as teenagers, they're going to resist and they're going to rebel. And before you know it, you're at odds with your child because the direction in which you think your child ought to go is not what he thinks. It takes a conversation. Of course, you're going to motivate because everybody needs motivation from time to time, and especially children. They need to know that along the path, whether the knocks come, and it doesn't matter how frequently those knocks come, you're there to help them to get up and to stay the course. And you're going to also along the way give praise. Acknowledge the steps that they've taken along the way. Acknowledge that they have achieved.
The first one, honesty. Parents need to help children to find a way to tell the truth. And the best way to encourage truthfulness in your child is to be a truthful person yourself. The second one is justice. Insist that children make amends. You hurt someone's feelings, you hear your child saying something that's wrong, call them on it right away and let them know that even though you apologize, sometimes it's very difficult to take back what you're saying. The third value, determination. Encourage them to take on challenges. The fourth value, consideration. Teaching them to think about others, the feelings of others. And the last one, and it's my #1 element of effective parenting, love. Teaching your children the value of love.
The Be the Influence campaign, which starts with Parent Month, is intended to target parents to adhere to one of the the 3 components of effective parenting. The Be the Influence actually will continue because we intend to have a 3-year campaign with the 3 components being get involved, be the example, and encourage dreams.
Be the Influence will support the NPSC's flagship initiative, the Parent Mentor Program.
The mentorship program, I intend to extend to have it across the country because I believe it's such a strong program. Here it is, parents are tooled and they get an opportunity to now help to improve the practices in parenting as they see them exhibited in their own communities, because the parents who become mentors are from the community. And so they go through 13 weeks of training in 10 modules in effective parenting.
There are currently 82 mentors and another 30 will graduate shortly.
While parents may not have the control they desire, they rarely lose the power to influence the lives of their children.
Take back the reins and you become the #1 influence in your child's life.
No, son. A verb is an action word.
Parents need to become more involved in their children's education.
Parents are the first and in many cases the most important teachers.
Read with your children. Review their schoolwork. Visit their school.
tapping and rapping and slapping, I said.
Nice, high five. Woo. A good education will never decay.
Way too often persons judge an epileptic person without truly understanding them. This week we'll take some time out to expose the myths surrounding this condition.
What do Socrates, Theodore Roosevelt, Charles Dickens, Alfred Nobel, Prince, Lil Wayne, Elton John, Danny Glover, and Hugo Weaving all have in common? If you said they're all famous, that's not quite the answer I'm looking for. All these prominent figures are believed to have or had what many know as fits or seizures associated with epilepsy, one of the oldest and least understood medical conditions.
It is not dopey take you over, it is not spirits. We have these myths that we do need to dispel in Jamaica. Some people think it's contagious, and it is not contagious. You cannot catch epilepsy. Anyone, anytime can get epilepsy.
So, what is epilepsy? It's a disorder of the brain characterized by recurrent seizures, which are short periods of involuntary movements involving a part of the body, a partial or focal seizure, or the entire body, a generalized seizure. Our brains run on electricity, which is produced by cells called neurons. In some people, these neurons sometimes produce a sudden electrical burst or power surge, resulting in a seizure.
Epilepsy is a chronic disorder, just like asthma or diabetes. It's a disorder of the brain. And so when a patient has a seizure, they do have unusual behavior at the time of their seizure. But otherwise, they're usually quite normal. It's also not a mental illness. People with epilepsy are not crazy. It's a brain disorder, but it's not a mental illness.
The cause of epilepsy can be genetic,
meaning that you can be born with a genetic disorder that predisposes your brain to be abnormally wired, and that you are more likely to produce these epileptic discharges and have seizures recurrently. Sometimes you may have, when the baby is being formed in the first few months of their embryological life, you may have an abnormality happening with the brain formation.
Then, there are other conditions that can occur at any time during someone's life that can cause epilepsy.
Those conditions that are acquired would be those related to a physical injury to the brain or an infection in the brain, such as meningitis, which is an infection of the covering around the brain, or an encephalitis, which is an infection of the brain substance itself, as well as you may have stroke, decreased blood supply, nutrients going to the brain, also causing seizures and epilepsy.
Seizures do not always involve convulsions or jerking of the body. There are in fact over 20 different seizure types. Many are quite subtle, as in the case of 12-year-old Liana.
We found out when she was about 3 months old. It was something very subtle. We found out that she was just staring in one direction for probably a minute or two, keeping that stare.
For Marvin Fullerton, his experience was different.
I first found out in 1994, November 1994, when I was in technical high school. What I did was feeling some itching on my skin. I went to the school nurse, asked her what was wrong with me, and she told me that I need to change my bath soap. Right.
And what happened after that?
Well, I changed my bath soap and nothing really changed after. But it was January 4, 1995 when I had my first attack. And I woke up in my father's car going to hospital.
Even though he was soon diagnosed with epilepsy, Marvin was able to live a normal life for most of his years as a student.
I was able to go to school. I was put on simple medications such as Tegretol CR 200. No problem. It was easy taking it. It prevented me from having an attack, but my body was not having much problems at those times.
Marvin went on to attend the Vocational Training Development Institute, VTDI, and the University of Technology. He holds a diploma in architecture and construction management. But despite his academic achievements, he still has challenges gaining employment.
I'm not working right now because it was just the other day I was in the hospital, right? And I got an interview for a job. The interview was wonderful, but I was in the hospital, so the job somewhat got turned down. They found out about the situation and I got turned down.
Unfortunately, there are those who believe that persons with epilepsy cannot work or lead normal lives.
Most people, 70 to 80% of people with epilepsy can have their seizures controlled. It's the person you employ who you don't yet have their first seizure. Those are the ones that you should be worried about, because any of us can develop epilepsy for different reasons at any time.
If you believe someone is having a seizure, there are some things you should never do.
Do not put any objects in the mouth. Do not put a spoon to hold the tongue down. Do not bring scallion. Do not take a dirty sneaker and put over the face.
So then, what should you do?
You need to cushion their heads. Whether you have a cushion or a jacket, you can take off and make a cushion just to support the head so they don't damage themselves. You loosen, if it's a man with a tie, loosen his clothing so that he can get some air and he can relax. You turn the person on the side. Do not put them with their heads right back. Turn them on their side and the tongue will fall and any fluids of the mouth will drain out to the side. And I guarantee you, you cannot swallow your tongue. A seizure would take between 3 to 5 minutes. Now, if the seizure continues for more than 5 minutes, you should take that person to the hospital.
Anti-seizure medication is the most commonly used method to control seizures. Discounts are available for epilepsy patients who are registered with the National Health Fund. But there are side effects. Some persons experience weight gain, drowsiness, irritability, skin rashes, and blood platelet changes, among others, all of which require understanding from those around them. Then, there is also medical marijuana or medical cannabis.
It seems to have helped a number of, especially children with epilepsy that have been intractable, that is difficult to treat. But in Jamaica, we still need legislation in order to use it, and there's still a lot of research that needs to be done about the dosing of the CBD or cannabidiol to be used to treat epilepsy, but it surely seems as though it may be promising.
Research has also shown that diets such as a ketogenic diet can help control the onset of epileptic seizures. The Jamaican Association for Epilepsy offers support for persons with epilepsy and their families. The association also holds regular meetings with members at the Andrews Hospital to share experiences and discuss concerns. They can be contacted at telephone 968-8274 or email jaepilepsy@gmail.com.
We are at the end of another Jamaica Magazine, hoping you found our program informative. Send your feedback to jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm. Visit our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter to stay informed, and download our app on your Google and Android devices. You can also visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for more information. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.